Hi, I'm Arden Bendler Browning. I'm in my studio in Philadelphia, and I am going to talk a little bit about the work that I have up for a solo exhibition titled Off Screen at Galleri Urbane. Sure. So there are many different ways that I've been thinking about escape, and I think initially a lot of that came from just the experiences of the last few years of being stuck at home during COVID quarantine, along with the rest of the world. But also my heritage is a big part of it. I'm the descendant of Jewish refugees on all sides of my family. And, just having heard the stories of how each of them became Americans in order to survive just kind of built me. I had this built-in sense of how important it is to be able to move around and to keep looking for another place if your home place doesn't necessarily feel like the right place to be anymore. I've always had this wanderlust and this desire to just keep looking and seeing what else is just a little bit further ahead, but also a deep attachment to home. And I think also just being a mother of teenagers and a young child, I can't always go to the places that I would like to go, and so I have to create other ways to escape, and sometimes it's through art, through film, through reading, or just creating my own worlds. So I really, wanted to travel when my kids were younger, and I just couldn't figure out a way to get away. And so I decided, along with my partner, to create like a mobile studio residency where we would take these huge road trips and strap the kids in the back. Thankfully, the kids like that. And I just paint. My husband likes to drive. So I started working on yupo really just along with other materials as an experiment, but I found that it just seemed to make the most sense. Yupo is this kind of plasticky paper, and so the paint doesn't like fully absorb into the surface like it would with a cotton-based paper. And that to me kind of made sense with this desire to capture movement and change. So the paint is kind of rolling around the surface and there's not as much control over it. I just set up the yupo on my lap, and I have a palette next to me and a cup of water in the cup holder. I lay out the paintings on the dashboard to dry, and then I keep going. And I've done this when I'm hiking as well. If I find I can't work outside or while moving in a car, I take a ton of photographs, and then I will paint in my studio looking and clicking through photographs, kind of as like another form of simulated movement through time. The way I interpreted Jane Bennett's book called Vibrant Matter was that she's shifting the typical hierarchy of how we tend to view inanimate objects, where we think as humans, we are controlling what is happening. And she's sort of creating this idea that there's nothing that doesn't have some sort of inherent energy, and that everything is contingent upon the relationship from human to object, object to human. It's constantly changing and kind of all part of this interconnected web. And I see painting very similarly, where, I think that's why I'm drawn to painting. It's not really just ever this finished object, but it's constantly changing. It's a capture of all of these different movements and marks and layers. And then when somebody is engaging with the painting, it's becoming a different thing. And then they might look at another painting and bring another interpretation or energy to it. And then, of course, working in VR then kind of takes that to another level, where now I'm bringing a person into the actual immersive space of a painting. So they are fully part of it, and that space that's not quite real, wouldn't really exist without them. And then, you know, the way that they might look at the physical painting after experiencing the virtual one is yet another experience that has already changed. So there's just this kind of shifting of energy and different ways that the objects become something else and become these active worlds. I was thinking about how I could reference this kind of mashing up of real physical, you know, real world experience along with the mediation of digital imagery. And all of the works have this combination of a rectangle, generally, you know, from like a lap-size drawing that was made from a photograph that I've then collaged onto a circular, larger panel, or in the virtual reality space, the space itself is spherical, but I'm always starting with an enlarged photograph of generally a rectangular drawing, and then making marks to create this more softer, you know, curved space. So that's part of it, but also this idea that whatever you see on the screen is not the full truth. It's not the whole picture. It's only part or an idealized version of it. And so I'm trying to kind of allude to that it's impossible to ever fully capture a moment or a place. You're just getting one bit of it. And how can I also create just a sense of experience as well, and have those play off of each other. So this is such a funny question, because my name starts with A. I think I always just intuitively thought all of the other letters are more interesting. And I remember in kindergarten, like one of the very first things I had to do was my teacher gave all of the kids a piece of string and just asked each of us to form the letter that our name started with this one piece of string. And I was just stumped. I thought, well, you need two pieces to make an A. How can I do it? And I just remember being really frustrated. And eventually she came over and showed me, like, oh, you just make a loop and just imagine that that's an A. And I just could only see it as a lowercase cursive e. And so it just wasn't making sense to me. And so maybe that says something about how my creative mind is limited in some ways, but and I did name one of my daughters with a name that starts with A, so I don't dislike it too much, but generally every other letter I think is super interesting and exotic.